let me dive right into Jim's background. I mean, Jim has been in this industry for a long time. He's been a part of over $3.4 billion in government contracting, and he's also actually a part in a great significant way of GovWin and the GovWin community, and they're certainly also participating in our Quick Focus event, and they're key sponsors there. So Jim is an expert in government contracting, and without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to you to kick things off.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it very much. Welcome, folks on the line. It's really a pleasure to be here and talk to you. I'm here to address 10 key success elements for successful capture, and this is really how to unlock the tactical sales secrets that we're all looking for and edges that we're trying to get from a competition standpoint. One of the things I like to try to do is just make it easy for everybody by saying that according to some polls, most listeners forget about everything that they've listened to within 48 to 72 hours of the time that I give it. So I try to make one point and one point that would stick. So the main point, the big idea that I'd like to give you today is that there are some secrets that are not so secret if you really think about it to how to win a government contract and how to unlock the tactical sales potential of your company. So I'll go through those, and what I'd like to do is use, with all due respect to David Letterman, I'll use the David Letterman technique of top 10 in reverse order. So if we can, we'll start with the key number 10. To a successful capture is essentially to be out in front. That is to plan early and to start early. Now look, I'm practical enough to know that in proposal in Capture 101, it says that you should do a certain advance work before an RFP comes out. And that is what the RFPs, what the capture work usually is associated with is about 12 to 18 months from the, in advance of an RFP release is when the capture work should begin. As a practical matter, we all know, though, that sometimes that period is shortened very much, and as a result, reality is less than the 12 to 18 months that you read about in a textbook. But the key when you're talking about being out in front and planning early and starting early is to make sure that you do a number of things. First of all, track new and emerging opportunities. That is a key element. Secondly, narrow your target range as quickly as possible. Third, make your customer contact early, the FaceTime, if you will, early, particularly before an RFP comes out. Fourth, use whatever screening process that you have to assess the opportunity and to mine for more data and more intelligence. But the earlier you can make a bid, no bid, or at least a tentative bid, no bid decision, the better off you'll be in terms of conserving your resources and your energy. Also, you should plan from prior to the RFP so that you're not caught by surprise when the RFP drops, and mobilize as early as possible, hopefully in advance of an RFP if the effort is big enough. So part of the key is to be early and plan early, and that's key number 10. The ninth key to a successful capture is basically to listen to your client and to listen no matter what. And I like to put it this way: listen more than you speak and question more than you answer. Employ your 2 ears and only your 1 mouth, and I think there's a reason why it's that way. But the odd thing is, in our business, most sales executives and capture managers when they are in front of a government or their customer feel that they have to monopolize the time by showing the customer how smart they are. Well, it's my view is that what you want to do is let the customer show how smart he or she is to you, and that is listen. And so employing 2 ears and 1 mouth is a good sort of guideline. And I would say that what you want to do is have a marketing entry strategy. In other words, seek a meeting with the decision makers based on a strategy that I will talk about in just a second. We often characterize it as business development by walking around, or BDBWA, if you will. That's key number 9. The eighth of key is basically be in it for the long haul and be tenacious. Basically start with the end in mind. In other words, where you want to go, how you want to win, how you want to achieve it. And if you're going to be a player in this market, the suggestion is that be tenacious and resilient. Don't just dip your toe in the water. You have to be able to, and willing to plunge in. That means assembling the necessary capital, developing a bid formula of how many bids you want to submit in a given year, and that's basically a function of the size of your budget and the size of your staff and your energy and your time and your stamina. But the point would be is make it more than a single shot. If you're going to go after this business, you have to be prepared to stay at it, and also to, unfortunately, to expect to lose more than you're going to win initially. In fact, I would say that you hear all sorts of talk about probability of win or P-win or win probability, and the facts are that most people, most companies tend to greatly inflate their win probability. I find it amazing that if there's 10 bidders for a given opportunity, how all 10 of them can be convinced that they have a 60 or 70 or 75% chance of winning. The facts are that in reality, if you have about a 33% chance of winning, I believe that that is a very acceptable and common benchmark to use. You're very fortunate if you have that. Another suggestion would be is to bid to win or don't bid at all. And that's it's a hard fact, but if you're not in there to actually win, if you're not prepared to price it accordingly, then the chances are that you're not going to win it. And so look at this as a chance to show that you have staying power in this marketplace if you're ultimately going to be successful. Key number 7 is basically team for bandwidth. In other words, let your reach not exceed your grasp. And by that I mean that typically if you're starting out in this business, or if you're a startup or an entrepreneur or a small business that's looking to grow, the best way, I think, and the best mechanism to use is to team with other companies by way of a strategic alliance. That greatly expands your capability and your bandwidth and helps your win probability, as I say. I'd like to take the view that 20% piece of the action of a win is better than 100% of losing. And so generally, team when you're newly formed, team early, team to offset your weaknesses. And if you are going to team, then there are certain rules that you need to follow, one of which is make sure you have a defined work scope and a level of effort. That would be a piece of advice that many companies have learned the hard way. They will, for example, sign up with a prime contractor, but in the rush to get on the team, they do not try to negotiate specific roles, responsibilities, levels of effort, scopes, or whatever. And as a result, it's so amorphous that when that prime contractor wins, often there is no way to fit the subcontractor into the mold. So key number 7 is basically team for bandwidth. The 6th key to a successful capture is to use a laser, not a shotgun. Exercise market focus and discipline. Suggest that you begin by subscribing to one of the leading data services, and hint, hint, we all know what one of those might be from our hosts here. But then quickly segment the market and stay in your swim lanes and do not divert from them. Set your rigorous bid, no bid criteria. Track a manageable number of opportunities. No sense trying to track everything. Resist pop-up targets of convenience, and by that I mean when your boss comes in on a Monday morning and turns on his or her computer and there's lo and behold, an RFP. Next thing you know, we're off and chasing it. That's called a pop-up opportunity, and they're generally not successful. I mean, I'm not saying in the history of mankind that somebody hasn't won one of those things, but essentially it is not a high probability strategy for a win. Look for both prime and sub opportunities if you are using your laser, but the key is to be focused, specialized, concentrated, dedicated, limited, disciplined, and restrained in your bid profile. If you don't, you're going to find yourself spread too thin to be effective, and your win probability drops. Key number 5, we call it know your place. And essentially this is sometimes a startling piece of information to a lot of companies. But remember that customers want servants, not partners. Now, I understand that there's a lot of lip service being paid to partnering and working together, and I certainly don't object to partnering or working together in that sense. But in the final analysis, there is a difference between the customer and the provider, and customers want people who work for them and serve their best interests. They don't want partners. They want good stewards. They want to be the hero. They want the contractors to provide them air cover where necessary, or to be a scapegoat if that comes to that. They want the contractors to provide advice and options and recommendations, but not to give direction. So that is part of the key, is to know your place in a successful capture. Key number 4, and I'm working my way down to the top 10. Key number 4 is basically, it's not what you're selling, it's what they are buying. And that is a big difference. You recognize this basic truth. The government does not, excuse me, your companies do not capture, the government awards. That's how I would phrase it. And that's a distinction that's important. One of the things you should do is remember that it doesn't matter if you have the best widget in the world that you're selling. If the government ain't buying it, then you're selling the wrong thing. So one suggestion would be quickly is to isolate on a challenge that that customer has, craft a solution, put it in the form of a value proposition, create and execute a call plan to get in front of that customer, and make sure that when you're meeting with that customer that your program manager has plenty of face time. So it's not just the sales and BD people that are talking to the customer. The third key to a successful capture is basically to be a capture leader, not just a capture manager. Managers we have, leaders are in short supply in our business. And one of the things as a leader you should do is to insist on teamwork and cooperation, but more importantly to have courage to go after the right targets at the right time, and to have the discipline and the courage to turn down opportunities when they don't fit your profile. There is a difference between a leader and a manager, and I will have more about that at the end of this presentation. The second key to capture success, key number 2, is basically realize this basic fact. It's not about you or your company or your product or your service. It's about the customer. So dedicate yourself to your customer's service and make that your prime directive. Exceed your customer's expectations by going the extra mile, by throwing in some freebies if necessary, by demonstrating corporate commitment, by giving and having some skin in the game if you can. Be a good steward of that assets of your customer, and don't lose sight of those values, particularly when they count most. And then finally, and last and first on my list, key number 1 is meet important needs, and that is to be customer focused. Find an important need of your customer and then meet it. That is really sales in its essence, right down to it. If you think about it, do not just pursue profits for their own sake. It's my experience is that if you are serving an important need of your customer, the profits will come naturally. If you're seeking to maximize your profits, you're going to do so at the cost of your effectiveness with that customer. Think about the things that your company does when you're awarded a government contract. These are important things that make a difference. That could be everything from combating terrorism to cleaning up the environment to promoting equality and human rights, or communicating globally, or managing vast amounts of data. But whatever it is, find an important challenge, an important need of that customer, and then build your strategy around that. So that is the first and foremost key. So I mentioned at the beginning that my big idea was that there is a set of keys that will help you win. And so just to summarize them very quickly, they are 1, or number 10, be out in front, listen to your client, be in for the long haul, team for bandwidth, use a laser, not a shotgun, know your place or the role of a contractor, remember that it's not what you're selling, it's what they're buying, be a capture leader, not just a capture manager, dedicate yourself to customer service, and then finally, first and foremost, meet an important need of your customer in order to be customer focused. So I mentioned about capture managers and capture leaders. So in conclusion, let me just say that if you're going to exercise true leadership, what you need to do is to add value to everything that you do and everything that you touch, and do not accept complacency or an attitude that in any way welcomes mediocrity. Model an extraordinary commitment for your team and for your company and for your customer. Hold yourself accountable and never, ever fail to meet one of your commitments. Make it your job to make everybody on your team that is involved in the capture or the proposal, make them heroes as opposed to yourself. Exercise authority and responsibility wisely. Do not delegate responsibility ever without commensurate authority. Sometimes that's a problem. We do it the other way around. You're given the responsibility to bid or to win, but not given the authority to execute. Share the credit and never hoard the glory, and accept the blame if there is any, and never point fingers or make excuses. And finally, to be humble, especially when you're right, especially when you have an approach that you think is going to win, but then be open to listening to other ideas. So in conclusion, that's my 10 keys to winning, and be happy to talk about